r/2x chromosomes. Kishbish says, what was your straw that broke the camel's back in a friendship or relationship? Him talking about little shit that builds over time into something intolerable, and then one little thing that may have been meaningless on its own happens and you just think, you know what? Frick this shit. I think I've hit mine with a friendship, but am interested to see what others say, so I can feel less alone. Golden_Mandela says, was living with a boyfriend for the first time. He kept making all the decisions, and it didn't feel equal. One day I was finally making spaghetti sauce the way I wanted it, and when I turned my back for a minute he dumped in a can of stewed tomatoes that I hated and he loved. I couldn't even have one batch of spaghetti sauce the way I wanted it. That tipped me over the edge. It took me a few months to get away, but that was when I knew the relationship had to end. Kishbish says, I don't care if it's petty, I'm mad for you. Miss Barry 91 says, I had a relationship end over pasta as well but differently. I had gone out for dinner with my friend the night before, to a favorite restaurant where I ordered my favorite cheesy ravioli dish. They always give portions the size if your head, so I knew I'd have some for after work the next day. I did this regularly. He knew not to touch my pasta. The next day I'm stoked for this pasta after work. Super stoked. I get home and grab the container from the fridge. It's too light. I open it. There was one ravioli left. That is it. Just one single ravioli. He ate everything else but one ravioli. It was almost 7 years ago, and I still get heated honestly. Frick that guy. Twilla May says, one of my ex's attention-seeking behavior was basically constant and hugely bothersome to me. He was a black hole of need, and he wanted it from me, and literally everyone else around him, even strangers in public. He did this thing where, if one of his songs came in on a store while we were shopping, he'd begin to very aggressively dance. Like not just a little wiggle, serious flailing and big steps and spinning. It was not only humiliating to be with him when he did this, but dangerous. Because more than once another shopper would bring his behavior to the attention of security, and twice we were approached by a police officer and an armed guard respectively. I begged him to just stop acting like he was living in the godamly universe because it made everyone uncomfortable. He consistently would argue that people liked it actually, lol, no, you psycho, and that even if they didn't it was just because they were wet blankets. The truth was, he just likes to be the center of attention, good or bad. Welp. One time he began to dance viscously in a CVS. I asked him to stop because he almost punched an old man while gesticulating, but he refused and began prancing up and down the aisles loudly yelling select lyrics to the song. He was so embarrassed to be with him, and then it dawned on me that I didn't have to be. So I just left. Put my basket down. Walked out of the store and drove away. Filled a box with the shit he had at my place. Dropped it at his mom's with a note that she should encourage him to seek therapy, and blocked him. We had a lot of issues, and I don't know why that was the tipping point, but it just was. He tells people I broke up with because one time he started dancing a little in a summer_is_safe_ says, good for you for realizing you could and should leave. That sounds so embarrassing. I will never understand how the act of annoying people to get negative attention can feel good for anyone, especially when it's to the point of hurting people with your dangerous flailing. I imagine he's knocked over products during these performances as well. If not, it's only a matter of time. Twilla May says, oh yes. He knocked shit over all the time. Caused people to drop things. He knocked over a whole Nutrigrain display once. I told him over and over that it was humiliating and unacceptable, and he just told me I was uptight and that I should care less what people think and embrace joy. But it wasn't about joy, it was about attention. Sometimes people would flatly ignore him, and if he was getting literally zero acknowledgement he'd end up going up to people and dancing at them. He did it to a woman who had a tiny baby in a body carrier once, and the pure terror on her face was so heartbreaking. I laid into him about it, and he just shrugged it off and told me I just thought she didn't see me. I didn't know she had a baby, yeesh. When I asked him why the frick strangers needed to see him, he just rolled his eyes at me and acted like I was the crazy person for not understanding. President Thug says, a friend of mine was always really open about her emotional state and the struggles she was feeling. And I always tried to listen, support and work through the mental pains. I was actually really impressed by the way she dared to lay these issues bare and talk them through. I kinda felt like I found someone I could open up to as well. It's really hard for me to open up. I don't often draw attention to my own emotions and feelings. So I tried opening up to her. Each time I did, she gives an answer like, "That must suck for you," and immediately returns to her own world/problems. I feel like I was treated as a therapist. And during a phone call I said to her that I didn't feel like I wanted to continue the friendship. She asked why and accepted that. Witchy warrior woman says, I feel like I was treated as a therapist, ouch. I'm sorry to hear that. A friendship is meant to go both ways, and I also had a friend that would use our time to just talk about her. I would try to join in, but she didn't really show any interest in me. Just in herself being heard and having an active audience. Golden Begrection says, to her credit, she asked you why and then gracefully accepted your reasoning without trying to guilt trip you into staying her emotional release outlet. On the other hand, it's possible she's one of those people who can't handle the emotional risk of true authentic connections, and as a result, are able to just close off from anyone at a moment's notice and never think twice. Who knows? Either way, good on you for vocalizing a boundary and then standing firmly in it. r/2XChromosomes. Moist_policy_71 says, Tradwives are just full-time submissives with a Twee aesthetic. A while back, I saw one of those Tradwife TikToks making the rounds on Twitter. Ick now the ones where some cute bud smug 23y/o woman gushes about the joy of making bread from scratch and obeying her husband's every word while wearing a weirdly suggestive summer dress that shows off her titties as she leans over to Nido. It sparked a thought, how is the lifestyle these women promote different from people who live as subs in a full-time BDSM master/slave relationship? The dynamic seems near identical, but instead of it being overtly sexual, it has a wholesome conservative Kataja frayed draped over it. You obey your husband/master's every word, you live to serve him, there's a free use arrangement sex, your husband/master takes on the responsibility and duties that come along with accepting the dominant role, etc. I have a sneaking suspicion Tradwives are women who'd have ended up in a full-time BDSM relationship if they'd just grown up in a more liberal area that allowed women to explore their sexuality without fear of judgment, but because they didn't, they interpreted this desire to be domed as I simply understand my role as a woman is to serve and obey a man, it's the natural order. Bark said Cat and Ween says, agreed. Very romanticized, glamorous Greece/Pleasantville/Stepford wife aesthetic with modern tech and conveniences. Let me tell you about the actual 1950s, ladies. Your husband took the car to work. You're trapped in the house with no social media to pose for, and a landline telephone. No bank account. You had to have a useful skill that forms blisters on your fingers to make a few dollars a week. Go ahead and pass that away on bolts of cloth to make your stupid poodle skirt clothing. A dust bowl, tumbleweeds and your house regularly being demolished by tornadoes. The threat of a nuclear war. Taking turns sheltering the women in your neighborhood when their husband got so drunk he was close to killing her in a blacked out rage. Looking after Sally's 9 kids when she was in labor with her 10th because her husband was determined to breed her to death. And laudanum. One of the first rounds of opioid crisis people were tricked into taking as a solution, instead of solving the base societal problem of the time. But yeah, okay, if you're secure enough and well off enough, make a mockery of those times. My grandmas are rolling in their grades at women willingly dressing up and going back to that shit. Espionage Coven 1 says, there's a reason women initially stopped doing this though. You could be all that for a man, and he'll still cheat and start treating you like a house appliance once you have kids, and he gets a shiny new younger side piece. I actually think it will be pretty interesting in a few years to see all the "it was a I'm trapped and now I'm a struggling single mum. Surprise he started cheating and treating me like dirt TikToks." Aquarius 1975 says, exactly, these relationships should never be glorified. One can argue all they want that it is all nice to stay at home and not have to do traditional work when you are in love, but reality usually sets in at some point. The fact is that these conservative men will see their wives as personal property that they can treat however they wish because she has no other options. There's a very good reason why the women's movement has always emphasized the importance of becoming economically independent. Katathymia says, I've noticed the same. This doesn't apply to all of them, but a lot of them are definitely BDSM/kink relationships, some more obvious than others. Some of them seem so obvious they have to be aware of it, others strike me as women who aren't quite aware of their own fetishes. This would all be fine, if only they didn't decide to preach it as the ideal lifestyle for everyone. Vite 1991 says, lol, these Tradwives sound like they just wanna be someone's full-time sub without the leather and whips. But hey, to each their own I guess. Just don't come crying to me when your husband/master starts getting a little too controlling for comfort. No_banana_581 says, the Tradwife thing always struck me as sexual. It's like a game or something. Catig9 says, not exactly. There's also a religious rhetoric some of these women go by. Marshmalotov says, I don't gel with the whole Tradwife thing, but I also don't like the idea of reframing someone's lifestyle and moral values for them. Trex Bishop Bra says, that's correct. They also get real pushy about how everyone else should join in on the kink. Fire_Thorn says, I don't know, I was a housewife for 17 years, but in the bedroom I'm not the submissive one. Darkwafel says, agreed. Though most healthy BDSM I know has renegotiation of those roles, while Tradwifing comes with mandate of God. Plus the Tradwife include children and the dynamic which Ike. Didistator_ says, it's more religious than sexual. I don't agree with your analysis because kink is more of a game/roller play, whereas Tradwives are just conservative women who pretend to be happy. Also, let's not confuse Tradwives with Sam, it's very different. Tradwives who go on social media and try to influence young women into thinking being not much more than furniture to a men and that they are put on the planet to breed are disgusting. Sturtle says, it's BDSM without a Safi award. And we all know nothing good happens when you don't have a Safi award and continuous consent. r/2XChromosomes. Hippie says, student who is an Andrew Tate fan, help. Hi everyone, I 33 male, am a VP at a TK8 school. Last year while subbing a 5th grade class some pro-Tate chatter started. I explained to the students that he is a misogynist predator with worse than awful behaviors. The students accepted that, and I heard nothing moving forward. This year, a single 8th grader announced he would go on moral crusade to spread the good word of Andrew Tate. I pulled him aside and gave him the 8th grade version of my speech. It did not go the same way. He was much more staunch that Tate is an alpha male, billionaire, and we are just jealous of his expensive watch. I tried explaining that he basically admits to human trafficking for his money. He promotes because he believes men are meant to be dominant. He debated that has only been indicted, not found guilty, so has just a victim of haters. Now, here is where I want to ask for help. He told me if I could give him proof of Tate saying he is pro-SAP, that his business model is manipulative human trafficking, or if he is found guilty, he will stop promoting human filth. I tried looking up content, but kept finding articles that speculate that he is a bad person. Can anyone help me get evidence from this person mouth? I would be so appreciative. Also, while I'm here, I just want to say thank you to this sub. I have just been a passive lurker / supporter, as long as I can remember. Reading stories, listening to responses and viewpoints has helped me be a better person and better support to so many. I'm a straight white guy, and know that I need to be a loud and fierce advocate for equal rights. Silence is acceptance. This sub has helped me fight that fight. So, thank you. Danivel says, call his mom, not his dad. I can tell you, as mom of 2 boys and grandmom of 3 boys, there would be some serious talks happening and papers being written. Brittany 2007 says, thank you for taking an interest in him. It is frightening how easily this spreads, and how boys are targeted, especially online. Shahahas Roots says, my dude, you wanna be like a man who has to pay women to hang around him? That's a weird self-burn, but okay. Purpler Flame 8 says, how can you convince a flame that the fire is hot? You can't, because they are the same temperature. This kid doesn't need proof that Tate is a pose. He needs to be taught what a pose is and how guys like Tate operate. They sugarcoat their poison with kernels of truth and relatability. P_Lerichin says, subs like r/brothel and r/menslib may have more resources for helping young boys see how harmful figures like Tate are, not just for the people around them, but for themselves too. Miffy 495 says, also a white male educator. I take this stuff seriously, but paradoxically I also feel like the harder we fight against it and appear to take it seriously, the more some of these boys are going to double down on it. It's horrifying the way that it's spreading. I don't have any hardcore evangelists of is the way that you do. Not sure how I deal with a case that severe. I will share my approach with boys who seem to be dabbling in his nonsense though. Teaching 8th and 9th grade, I try to play into the same insecurity that would drive people to Tate in the first place and use it against him. If I hear his name brought up, I throw out a fan thing like Tate. Really? Man, imagine having to work that hard just to prove to yourself that you're a man. It speaks the middle school language enough and takes the wind out of his sails. AMD hopefully will have the kid in question think a little more about just what all this performative crap actually is. Shafan says, it might also be worth looking into how his online Tate University was a total scam, designed to take money from insecure people while teaching them very little. I accept that this is a very male-centered point, and it doesn't quite reach the toxicity of Tate's misogyny. But I think it's also still worth communicating to your student that for all Tate might talk about improving men's lives, he does not give a frick about the lives of his followers, except insofar as they give him money and attention. Summer 4th Asal says, I think by making Tate out to be a hated figure he becomes more appealing to boys, as if some kind of rebel fighting the system. I think asking the boy what he likes about Tate and subtly exploring this would make the boy say out loud these things Tate says, and just ask him why he believes these things, and when he started to feel such thoughts. Tate is scum. But I think just saying this to boys makes him a martyr to them. Just my opinion. r/2XChromosomes. Unestablishment 7973 says, someone keeps trying to open our apartment door. For context, myself 23 female and my fiancé 29 male have lived in a new city for about 8 months. We were warned that the city is sort of rough, so we took extra precautions in finding a nice and safe apartment complex. So far, everything here was nice and quiet, besides the occasional bickering and loud cars. Yesterday while taking a nap, my fiancé noticed that someone was walking around outside in the hallway jiggling other people's doorknobs, mumbling to himself, and seemingly calling out for someone. Eventually the man tried to open our door as well, before going back inside to the apartment next door to us. We've rarely seen who our neighbors are despite one encounter a few weeks ago where they were going out as we were coming home, and we just nodded and said hello. They all seemed nice. Flash forward to today, 9 AM, jiggling on door starts. My fiancé wakes me up in a panic and we both stare in horror as the doorknob twists back and forth. He decides to look out through the peephole and sees the same man from yesterday. The strange man goes back into his apartment afterwards. This happened about 2 more times today. So my issue is, what the heck do we do? My fiancé is hesitant to call the police, since the police here suck and he doesn't want to piss off our neighbors, since we plan to live here a while. After the 4th time he attempted to open the door, I told my fiancé, if it happens again I'll be calling the peace officer that lives in our neighborhood. I'm okay for now, just shaken up, and wish I was able to do more without making a big scene. Edit, would like to add I have informed the apartment management and hopefully I'll receive a response tomorrow morning. Constructed says, the guy lives in your building? I'd speak to both the management and the police. You could phrase it to the police as a wellness check, because this guy might have dementia or something else wrong. It's possible he knew the people who lived there before you, and forgets they aren't there anymore. Establishment 7973 says, yes, he looks to be an older man, maybe about 50. My fiancé said he seems like he may be struggling with some kind of mental illness, but we aren't sure. Cheeses_greyest says, if you're open to getting a doorbell camera, they make removable holders that attach the doorbell to the door without damaging it. Hopefully, this gets nipped in the bud, but just in case you need evidence of who it is, and the frequency with which it happens, it might be good to have. Establishment 7973 says, thank you, definitely going to be looking into that. Fire_Thorn says, maybe early onset Alzheimer's? People can get it when they don't look really old. That would explain why he was trying the door over and over all day. My dad had it in his 50s and part of what he did was walk circles in his house trying every door over and over. Playing a recording of dogs barking when he's at the door might be a deterrent. If other people live in the apartment with him, you could introduce yourself and just mention that you've seen him trying doors and ask if you should point him back toward his apartment when you see it happening. That way they'll be aware, if they are not already, and it would give an opening for them to explain what's wrong with him, whether it's mental illness, dementia, etc. They don't have to explain, but knowing what's going on may make it less scary for you. If he lives alone, you should mention to the building management that it's happening. Tell them you're just concerned for his well-being and hope they could check on him. TwoXChromosomes says, please alert the management of the building that they need to do a wellness check on your neighbor. Prinikin says, the same thing has been happening to me. I got a message from his wife apologizing saying he's not as sharp as he used to be. He's 68 and I think he's developing dementia. Perpetual King says, as a no contact, immediate, get the point across idea, just grab the handle from inside while he's jiggling and twisting the knob to stop it. Resistance on the knob when he isn't expecting it mid-turn. Just a little dude, we see you without having to open the door and confront him. Tajelilix says, a lady in my neighborhood apologized to us all because apparently her husband has low blood sugar and some other issues and forgets where he is and where he lives. He was going up and down the street randomly knocking on doors, scaring folks. Angriest man in Wessex says, If you have a neighborhood police officer, I'd contact them. This guy trying to enter 3 times, let alone 4, is enough that it should be taken seriously. They might be able to handle things discreetly or at least create a paper trail. Inform management too. I don't know the full situation, but honestly, it sounds like he might either have some sort of substance abuse problem causing impairment, or could have some sort of health issue. Or he's just looking for a quick in and out burglary if he's checking multiple doors. Commandrix says, maybe give building management a heads up about this. They may know how to find out who it is and, if appropriate, have someone do a wellness check or something. I doubt it'll escalate as far as him getting evicted if this behavior stops. She_plays says, absolutely get her in camera if you can. You should also tell your landlords as it feels like he's looking to steal limo. The police probably won't do much until someone is hurt or something is stolen. Edit. Oh, you're suspecting dementia or schizophrenia. Schizos might hurt you on accident, so be careful, but sounds like you don't need to bang back, yell to frighten him or anything. I can absolutely understand feeling frightened in that situation. Deep Spasus Venofnin says, this doesn't seem nefarious, it seems more that he is having mental health issues or dementia. If you see him in the hall, introduce yourself, see if he lives with anyone else or has family visiting. I would not get the police involved. Maybe ask neighbors or building management about it. They may be like, oh, that's crazy Uncle Carl, he gets lost sometimes, or he thinks he still has his cat from 20th ago. Anyways, I would start with neighbors and management, and I would phrase it as, hey, is this guy okay? Joe Staff says, sounds like schizophrenia or something. Kitten says, you must live in Philly or Chicago. JK. Vivian_Stringer_Bell says, why doesn't your fiance open the door and ask him what he's doing? Furiz Attack says, attempting to break into a home is a felony. Contact police ASAP. File a complaint. Your safety is in danger. And get a doorbell camera ASAP. Rain Mouse says, is the door handle metal? If so, you can totally resolve the issue with a car battery, crocodile clips, and a lesson the neighbor won't easily forget. Deadmas Senaris says, hook up a battery or electrical source to generate a negative impact on grabbing your doorknob. r/2XChromosomes. Fluffy_donuts says, car shopping and misogyny. I'm looking for a car. I'm not an expert, so I asked my friend, who is a mechanic, for help. I was prepared and ready for car sellers who will, and they did, totally ignore me and only talk to the man. I didn't mind it that much because clearly my friend knows a lot about cars and I don't so well. But when it comes to driving, oof. I've had my driver's license for almost 10 years. No accidents. My partner says I'm a very good and confident driver. While looking at one car, I asked the seller if we could do a test drive. He said of course, but I will drive first and then we switch. Okay, that was weird. Happened to me for the first time. Anyway, we hop in the car, he's driving, small talk, blah blah. Blah. Then we switch seats and that's when it got awkward. I fasten seat belts and he immediately says remember about the handbrake. I'm okay. I step on the gas, drive slowly to get back on the road, and Mr. Car Seller decided to add another brilliant thought during this ride. Woo. So far so good, we are on the road, wow. I didn't hesitate and asked, "An?" He got uncomfortable, so I repeat, "We are on the road, An?" That man was even more uncomfortable and said, "Oh, you know what it's like with women sometimes, they're afraid to drive." Wow. Told him I've been driving for almost 10 years. Wanted to ask him at what point do you need us to drive a car? What a DCK. I didn't buy that car anyways. My friend told me this car was shit and the seller was shady. Yeah, stupid bench says. My mom says that when they went to get her a car at like 3 different dealerships, the guy asked my dad, "What's your budget?" or something like that. Dad said my budget is 0 and pointed at my mom saying her budget is $X per month. Whether she spends it here depends on you. She says they would look at him for a second and look at her and think it over. Most of them went on to ask her what she was interested in. Charming says, I hate dealing with the dealership where we've gotten our cars. Our last car was having an issue where we could hear a whistling noise in the window. Like a seal wasn't properly sealing. I had been dealing with the service manager for weeks with no resolution, and I kicked it up to the general manager of the dealership. When we met with the GM, my husband was with me. I was explaining the issue. Remember, I was the one dealing with it with the service manager for weeks, and he kept turning to my husband and asking him questions. It got to the point where my husband was like, "Dude, you need to be talking to my wife. She's the one who's been trying to get it fixed with your service department." With our current car, we get free oil changes and have to do certain services different times of year. I'm on the ownership of this car as well as my husband. Whenever I've gone, I choose the option to wait. I tell this to the service desk guy or guys every time. Specifically, the one who I always seem to get. Note he is of a different culture and I think that's part of it. Anyway, I tell them I'll wait and just be sitting in the waiting room where they can clearly see me. Every time the car is ready, they call my husband, who's at work. I take it in on my days off, and it's beyond frustrating. Until one day, I brought it in as we were having an issue. I can't recall what it was, but since I'm the main driver of the car, my husband has a work vehicle, I know the car, inside and out. I'm waiting for them to finish with the car, scrolling on my phone. Next thing I know, my husband is calling me. He tells me the car is ready and the service desk guy told him what the issue was and what they did to fix it. I was sitting right there. I go up to get my keys. Service guy doesn't say a word to me about what the problem was. I ask and he says, "I told your husband, and I said I drive this car more than him. I'm the one who noticed the issue. I'm the one who made the appointment to bring it in. Tell me," and he does, though reluctantly. "Dude, I can change my tires. I can change out the engine and cabin filters. I can change the bulbs. I can change the battery on my car." When I left, I called my husband and broke down. It was so upsetting to be constantly ignored every time I had to bring it in. Was it a stupid reason to cry? Maybe. But it all just came at me at once. When I've gone the past few times, I wait until I can get another service desk guy and make sure they know I'm there and to speak to me about the car. Excellent 101 says, years ago, my best friend went into a dealership to buy a car. She knew exactly what she wanted, since it was the same car I'd bought 6 months prior, and I'd let her drive it multiple times and try out the different features. She did her research and knew this particular dealer had the right model in stock with the trim and color she wanted. She walked in and basically said, "Hi, I want to buy this specific car," and the salesman offered to let her test drive it. She said, "Nope, I'm ready to buy," and the salesman said, "Well, don't you want to wait until your husband or your dad is here?" She immediately left and went to the dealership in the next town, who was thrilled to take her money and order the car for her. Hoinvated Thesepiapa says, "This is why have been sticking to dealerships even for used cars. I just can't with a random dude selling their car. Dealerships are a problem too, but you usually at least have some recourse if they do something super shady or discriminatory. I had the misfortune of needing to buy a bunch of used cars over a short couple of years. 2 were hit, not my fault. Spouse blew the engine in their new-ish vehicle. What I refined and seemed to work seamlessly by the last car purchase. I made sure I was using an email address that didn't identify my gender. I use my initials instead of my first name, and dudes will always default to that must be a dude. If nothing clues them, it is a woman. This seems to make a night and day difference in the initial process of looking for a vehicle. I make inquiries about cars I find online through either the big car sites or on regional dealer websites that look like what I want. The first inquiry with that non-gendered name and email, I ask any questions not already answered like Carfax, maintenance records, recent repairs, anything I need clarification on, etc. I use all of this to filter down to one I want to test drive. I go in with financing in place and the intent of buying the vehicle if the test drive checks out. I schedule the test drive and let the salesperson know that I'm seriously interested, and if the test drive checks out I plan to buy it same day. Both times when I showed up they were confused I wasn't a dude. Both times I unfortunately had my now ex-husband in tow because the cars were out of state and I needed a ride there. The sales guys kept trying to talk to my ex-husband and would correct themselves when I answered them. Even after he told one of them he was literally just there because he gave me a ride and is waiting on me to test drive this car. But the hassle factor was minimal versus having the dealer know I was a woman from the initial contact. The times I had made initial contact and they knew I was a woman, I got mountains of bullshit through the entire process. Joyous_Cadley says, "Oh, I've said that, but it was with planes, not cars. Can you kindly show me what part of the aircraft is exclusively controlled by the pilot's penis? Got some uncomfortable looks." r/2XChromosomes. Love_myself_321 says, "I overheard my coworker. One male coworker was saying to another, 'I'm going to somewhere.' The other one, 'You can do whatever you want.' His response, 'If I could do whatever I want, half of the women here would be pregnant.' So disturbing to hear." Daniela says, "Report it. If it's at work it's unacceptable. If he says that loud enough for others to hear then he's too comfortable being a creep." Also, other dude shoulder called him out on that statement. Love_myself_321 says, "It's small workplace, we don't even have hours. I work there only 2 months and I know I would be immediately ostracized." Other coworker didn't said anything in response. Daniela says, "I imagine that makes things harder, yeah. Do you have manager you trust to keep it confidential and who can just send a generic memo to the office reminding people not to be effing pervs?" Axianus Velociraptor says, "It will always be disturbing to me how some men just casually think of rape and think there's nothing wrong with it. So much so that they joke about it nonchalantly." Much_comfortable_438 says, "I feel like, in their minds, they think it's not rape. Because once it starts we'll become so overcome with sexual desire that we'll want them to do it. Typical, disgusting, male domination fantasy. Male mind, I love my penis. How could anyone not want my penis? They just don't know they want it." Axianus Velociraptor says, "I read something as teen, so I may be wrong on this, that women being raped will produce vaginal secretions as a response to the act of being forcefully penetrated as the body's defense mechanism because the vaginal wall is being hurt since it's dry. The way our eyes produce tears when dirt or a lash gets in there." Years passed and as a teen, I overheard some male classmates talking about how, if the woman is wet anyway during the rape, it means she secretly wanted it. Starther Bulldog says, "What a pig." Mpasketty says, "But it's not rape when I do it. I'm a nice guy." Urza88 says, "Gross." Tootsnick says, "That would take me right 2 hours. It doesn't matter that he didn't say it to you. He said it to his colleague. And there's at least an even chance that the guy he said to was uncomfortable hearing it. Just because he's male doesn't mean he likes to hear that kind of shit." I'm reminded of a story about Ulysses Grant. There was a dinner of military officers, and one guy was going to tell a joke, and he started by saying, "Since there are not ladies here." Grant interrupted him and said, "No, but there are gentlemen." And you overheard it. I see you're a small workplace. I wonder if a personal appeal to anyone would land better than outrage. National_ad2193 says, I once was walking with two male colleagues during an outing. I was pretty new on the team and I usually freeze. We were talking about going to some place, and one of the colleagues said, "Oh, that's a place I would go with a GF not wife," and the other agreed. They both laughed. The one who said is a jerk. Is this odd or not? This conversation always keeps coming back to me. Stalkert_2 says, that's not a comment I'd be able to brush off or forget about, so long as that person was working there. It would make anyone's skin crawl, and I'd actively avoid situations where I had to work with that person alone. If you know that you wouldn't be supported in reporting this to your manager or someone else senior in this organization, then let that be a warning to you that you're on your own safety-wise. Ahoy says, every time I feel ashamed for saying something dumb in a conversation, I remind myself that there are people who say stuff like this and don't even think about it. r/2XChromosomes. Merxiuk says, my guy complimented my graying hair. My mum, my aunt, all of the older women in my life have at some point mentioned that I will have to dye my hair once it starts graying. I was told gray hair looks bad, looks unkept, looks unladylike. Well, I'm nearing 30, been graying for a few years now, and it's getting a bit visible. I'm too lazy to dye it and maintain it, so I don't. A male acquaintance, who doesn't usually give me compliments, just noticed the gray and said that it looks cool. I feel so refreshed. Sneaky518 says, that is awesome. I'm happy that someone complimented it. My wife's hair is really graying. It's a mix of dark brown and silver, with big silver stripes framing her face. I think it's gorgeous, really striking. Transnavigation says, okay, but gray hair slaps though. I've recently started wearing my glasses daily instead of only when I read, and I'm suddenly noticing so many small things and details about other people. There are so many gray hairs. On me, on my friends, on the babba-faced college freshman at my university. It's distinct. It's cool. I think back in the day, when only the few could afford/maintain dyed hair, undyed was a symbol of the peasants, or whatever, but now I think it's swung the other way, where if you have gray hair showing it has more of a connotation of being a choice. Like the hair version of not having lip filler/Kardashian face. Trickja says, one thing I really liked about my ex was the fact that he started graying at a really young age. He did once ask me to dye his hair, which I did with semi-permanent brown dye, but there was in my opinion nothing wrong with his gray hairs. I mean, just imagine in a few decades, having a full head of white/silver hair. I have wanted a color like that since my early teens, and I probably will for the rest of my life, ha ha ha. Graying hair is so wildly unique. Whether it's a pattern or some scattered streaks, you get free permanent highlights as a reward for aging. Back in the day, gray hairs looked bad because aging was considered a sin, but many people my age love it. I love dyeing my hair, but I wouldn't recommend doing it because you feel like it's what you have to do. You don't. The biggest reason why I'd probably be dyeing my hair non-stop when it's gray is because it's an amazing canvas for vibrant colors. Hot pink that washes out into pastels instead of mud colors? A dream. I'm sure you're rocking those grays. I know I would. My cat Pickles says, I feel like attitudes around gray hair are changing. People of my mom's generation go to great lengths to hide it, whereas I'm in my 30s and those of my friends who are already going gray are just like, frick it. There was even that trend for a few years in the 2010s where people were intentionally dyeing their hair gray. I hope attitudes are changing anyway, because grey hair is beautiful. Adiposa Hysteria says, I stopped coloring my hair during the pandemic. At the time I figured I would color it again one day. I never did. It was honestly such a freeing decision to just lean into it and let my hair be naturally grey. It made me rethink a lot of the pressure I'm feeling when it comes to my physical appearance as I get older. I guess I decided there is only so far I'm willing to go when it comes to looking my younger than my actual age. I can honestly say I love my hair glitter. Though I really wish I had a cool white stripe or something. Coupler Technical 6795 says, my hair is almost entirely grey. Word of advice, get purple shampoo. Keeps your hair a nice grey instead of yellowing. My younger kid, a fab 20, is nearly 40% grey already. Their older brother, 23, has a lot but not as much as they do. I was 50% grey by 25. Epixpisa Monkey says, my hair has been turning grey since my early 30s. I'm now 48. I used to dye my hair every 6 weeks, but since COVID I haven't dyed it at all, like a lot of other people. It took almost 2 years to grow out completely, and I love it now. I also got to see what my natural color was, lol. Leaf Chick says, not what you're asking, but I think grey hair is one of the prettiest things. I remember when I was little, a friend of mine almost had the thickest shiniest grey hair that she always wore in a long braid. I always thought, when I grow up I want hair like that. Conscious Magazine 50 says, I hate that it's being lazy to just continue to have natural hair for women, but normal for men to. Rad 504 says, I love everything about this post. I'm naturally blonde, so my grays come in like white highlights. I love them. I think they look so cool. 2 of my coworkers dye their hair black. Every few weeks, their gorgeous grey roots start showing, and I just wish they would let their hair grow in naturally. I've never mentioned it, though. I don't want to offend them. Tertiarus Karab says, grey hair is awesome. I'm in my 30s, and I have a few, but some of my friends have quite a bit, and I'm jealous lol rock that grey hair. Opposite underscore at 4567 says, good for you. Coloring hair can be very expensive and is time consuming. I encourage people to do it, only if they want to. Kalajenft says, nothing wrong with rocking the glitter strands. I personally love how shiny grey is, and streaking that through other colors usually looks awesome. I've always had dark hair, really hard to lighten enough for any non-red or orange vivid color. I just dyed over all my hair bright blue and the grays make it look awesome, like black with blue highlights. I'm going for neon pink once it grows out / more grays show up, so I'm grateful for my grays. I can't wait to have more hair dye experiments, and I'd love if it all turned white. I'll be rocking a rainbow if / when that happens. Promise underscore ambitious says, I wish I felt this. I'm almost 33 and have been going grey since I was 31. I was getting tired of it and ended up dyeing my hair jet black to hide it, and now I miss my natural hair color. r/2XChromosomes. Kind underscore contract 9912 says, I feel used when I have sex with my boyfriend. I really don't know who to talk to about this, because I feel like it would gross people out. I 18 female, have a boyfriend, Dylan, 19 male. We've only been in a relationship for about a month and recently have started having sex. He's super selfish in bed to the point where I just feel like I'm being used. I was the person who took his virginity, and I guess I feel kind of special about it in a way. He is a really good boyfriend outside of this. He holds doors open for me, takes me on dates 3 times a week and pays for everything. We really do have an incredibly healthy emotional relationship and have good boundaries. I had a breaking point tonight where after we started having sex I went to the bathroom and cried. He said he didn't want to touch me in certain spots and said it was gross, but wants me to do more to him, but when I do, that he doesn't return the favor. I really need to know how to fix this problem or address it. Can someone maybe give me advice? I'm currently sitting in the bathroom and I'm so miserable. Krabaka says, if your relationship is really good and healthy, it shouldn't rock the boat too much to tell him what you want. But opening doors and being considerate in every other way is not a reason to be with someone who disregards your wants in another. The fact is, he is disregarding your desires, and it doesn't matter if he is perfect everywhere else. All of you matters, not just 80% of it. Click_to_sign_in says, opening doors and paying for stuff. Okay, I get when you're young this stuff can seem important. But the guy said it was gross to touch you, and he really only gives a shit about himself. You can fix the problem by dating someone better. Dylan just sounds like a tool, sorry. Hey Owen says, if he thinks touching you in certain parts is gross, he may be too immature to be having a sexual relationship. And even if that's not the case, and he's gonna think certain parts of a woman are gross his whole life, you don't have to be with someone who is obviously not compatible with you sexually. Assume that he won't change. How long will you be with someone who can't fulfill you? Look, as a 41-year-old woman, let me just tell you flat out, there are so many wonderful sexual experiences waiting for you that are mutually satisfying and fun and great experiences you should run for. Life is too short to waste it on someone who thinks your genitals are gross. Bark said Cat and Ween says, teenage boys are terrible at sex. He only knows how to masturbate. Give him one opportunity to really get it into his head that sex is a partnered activity and you're not going to be his fleshlight anymore. If he wants to continue the relationship, he has to do what pleasures you too, or else why on earth would you continue with him? Badger_jam_88 says, he doesn't want to touch you in certain spots because it's gross. You need to stop touching this boy immediately. Sex is not something you give to a guy. It's supposed to be a mutual effort for both of your enjoyment. You need to sit him down and make him understand that if he can't make an effort to make you enjoy it too, it's not something worth your time. Cartography Book says, please stop having terrible one-sided sex that makes you so frustrated and miserable you have to cry. It's already causing you trauma, and it will eventually give you a full-on sexual aversion if you keep doing it. You have absolutely nothing to feel guilty or obligated about, regardless of how great he seems outside of it. He's a selfish pose in the bedroom. Seriously, the sex is great for him and trash for you, and he's trying to make more demands on you, so it's even better for him at your expense. You need to shut it down before he does permanent damage. He wouldn't tolerate being in your position for 5 minutes, so if he starts whining or threatening the relationship when he stops getting sex on demand exactly how he likes it, he can frick all the way off. Raya Childredy says, feels like he just sees you as a fleshlight and likely uses the same excuse to rationalize it in a great BF, so I deserve to have my desires and only mine alone fulfilled. Have an adult talk with him that sex is for both partners, and if he isn't willing to do his part then sex is off the table. Lord_Scuttlebutt says, come clean with him. Tell him what you want from him, and if he balks and refuses, don't give him what he wants. Erisad says, have you told him you're dissatisfied? Duxarise says, stop having sex with him. If it's not great for you, and he's not eager to make it great for you, just do not frick him. Tell him it's not worth your time and risk of pregnancy. Tell him he's a lousy lay. Fire him as a boyfriend and go find better. Howard Boothett says, your relationship is not healthy. He is not nice. He should not be calling anything gross or asking you do to things you wouldn't do. He's too immature, waste of time, move on. There's nothing special about virginity. Jazdrums 1979 says, sex is a two-way street for both people. In healthy sexual relationships, people should be able to ask for the type of touch and stimulation they require to feel pleasure and reach climax, all within reason. You're not asking him for varsity level kink to be performed. Touching and oral sex for many couples is standard issue. He needs to understand that vaginas are not stinky and gross. They are natural, healthy, and beautiful the way he may find the rest of you. If he cannot grasp this, you may need to send this one back to the factory. Braid Meher says, there are many times when I would say to talk to him and make sure he knows how you feel and give him a chance to change. This is not one of these times. A guy you've been seeing for only a month has already made you cry, feel used, and called you gross. Not only is he a huge dick, this relationship is so new, I wouldn't even recommend spending any more energy on it. Tell him he sucks in bed and break up with him. The first few months of a relationship should be fun. This is not going to get better. Cold Coal 81 says, you should tell him how you feel, you should tell him what you want him to do to you in bed. You should tell him that, if he goes down on you, only then will you give him a blowjob. Ajbrid 71 says, he's 19 and just started having sex. Not making excuses, but what do you expect? Tell him what you like and don't like. If his actions doesn't reflect that, break it off and consider it a chapter in your book of life. You're young, find a new partner that fits your needs. r/2XChromosomes. Budsmugler69 says, how to best support my partner terminating a pregnancy. I, 25 male, have been with my partner for 7 years. We've had numerous conversations over the years about what we would do in the event of her getting pregnant, and are both 100% certain we do not want a child anytime soon or possibly ever. We found out this morning that she is pregnant, likely about 6 weeks or so along. After discussion and being sure that we both do not want to keep this baby, we have made an appointment for tomorrow morning to terminate it. Thankfully we live in Canada, so have great resources for this. I want to be prepared as I can to help her get through this and be there for her as much as possible. To any women that have gone through this, is there any advice you could give, or have anything that your partner did to help support you through it? I'm reading the online pamphlets from the clinic, but would appreciate some first-hand advice as well, so that I can try to be the best support I can for her during this tough time. Thanks in advance. International Fee 255 says, I haven't been through it, but please be prepared for a lot of emotions. Pregnancy hormones are already running through her system, so it will take a while for them to go back to normal, and the fluctuations can make things very hard. Budsmugler69 says, that's a good point. I'd like to think I'm already pretty good at not taking things personally when hormones are running high, but I'll definitely be paying extra attention to it during this time and make sure to check myself. Aliteralbergoff_dix says, be prepared with her favorite snacks, a heating pad, and emotionally there for her. Cuddles are great, she might be sore, so if there are any household tasks that she usually manages, maybe try and take care of those for her. Sakurfawn Warabit says, you sound like a good partner. Hey_Acheli says, I just wanted to curl up in a ball with my partner and watch movies. The cramps were insane, and while I was am 10,000% sure it was the right thing to do, it's still a heavy emotional day. All I asked for was pads for the bleeding, and someone who cared for me to be there in case I needed to vent emotionally. Sounds like you're willing to be the support she needs, and that's all she'll ask for. But don't forget the pads. Cookie_pouch says, after my DNC I threw up on the car ride home, so I'd be prepared for that just in case. Status Effort 9380 says, right after I have a really nice memory of just laying in his bed feeling cares for. I think just being present and beside her is the best. Alternative underscore let underscore 1599 says, well, you are on the right path. You care about your partner and you asked. Taylor Splifty says, ask her how she wants to be helped. Nibblesm Giblet says, be prepared for her to have cramps quite a bit worse than period cramps. Get a couple of heating pads for her lower back and her abdomen and encourage her to sit and relax, put her feet up, etc. If she needs to talk and go through emotions, just be supportive and listen and let her get from point A to point B, and remember to take care of yourself the same way. Kind underscore tour 2671 says, be very supportive and let her process this on her terms. It might take a while or not. It's her body and her mind, let her decipher through all of her emotions. Be there to support her in every way possible. Good luck. Blush but to free says, I'd care more about my physical need to recuperate. I'd want a partner to give me at least a couple days off my feet to rest. Kind of like how you baby someone a little bit if they're sick with the flu. They can probably do lots of things for themselves. It's not like they're dying, but going out of your way to make sure they don't have to do much shows you care and that you have every expectation that their priority should be recovery over other responsibilities. Grocery runs, meal prep, cleaning. Take care of everything for a couple of days, basically. The cherry on top would be if I control the remote as well equals. r/2XChromosomes. Major Hot Lips says, wow, that's a lot of food. Any witty backs for this one? For reference, I'm not overweight, but I'm lazy and have been eating only twice a day because it's convenient and I just prefer it. That means when I eat my main meal, it's big. I keep getting comments from family and coworkers about my big meals and it's stressing me out. I grew up in a family where everything you ate was eyeballed and judged. Wanting more was basically considered immoral, and therefore I have some hang-ups and anxiety around being judged for what I'm eating. I wish people could just mind their own business. Marshmallow says, oh, this. I'm following the Noonaya diet. Noonaya diet. Noonaya goddamn business. Vita77 says, if you're going to be the food police, we'll have to get you a badge. Hauntadorix says, I like leaning into this kind of thing, so I would probably nom at them, or give an excited yeah it is, or do my caveman unga hungry. Bella Damazon's Mercy says, yes. And then just stare with a slightly confused look. Nothing like the power of befuddlement. Italian Insomniac says, not witty, but I don't think joking about it will get the message across. This is upsetting you, so tell them what I eat is none of your business and it's very weird for you to bring it up. If they don't stop, honestly, report them for workplace harassment. Anything that makes you feel uncomfortable at work should be reported, assuming you feel safe doing so. By the way, it doesn't matter that you're not overweight. You don't need to justify to us, or anybody, your size and what you eat. Please don't feed into that narrative. Overweight people are allowed to be hungry too. Skyarurus 1997 says, that's a lot of nerve, don't you have better things to be getting on with? Smile and say didn't realize you took such an interest in my life, then start explaining in detail what it is until they become very frustrated when you don't let them get a word in. Maybe not a good idea with creepy people. Ginger Catnitz says, not witty, but I'd just say okay and stare at them until they got uncomfortable. Spankenstein says, did you not get enough? Temp89 says, if it's a close relative I tell them I'm eating for two now and watch them freak out. Bonus points if you're a single teen. Sanguine underscore pup says, I prefer pure, justified aggression. You got a problem with me? Mind your own, frick-ing business. They will then either engage you or trail off with something like, I was just, then you hit them with, yeah you were just inferring I was going to gain weight, like I give a frick. Keep that shit to yourself, Gandhi. Shamrock Shaki says. For you, maybe. Said with a strong eyeballing of their less than perfect physique. Cotton84 says. I need to get my calories up so that I can bury your body later. Infomousecatladdy says. Yes it is, followed by I'm a growing girl / boy. Rovember_baby says. Yup. Hyogashald says. The key is to be condescending. What do you mean by that? And make them question why they ask such a thing as they attempt to justify all of it off just be like weird in a mean girl way. Make them uncomfortable and insecure. Nauticanaoki says. And make them spell out their shittiness. My guess is they will back down fast. Pot_of_crows says. Oh yeah really? Well the jerkstore called they are running out of you. HappyCamper87 says. Yup, do you want some? Let's eat. Batman_Oracle says. Wow, that's a lot of audacity yeah. I have almost as much food as you have audacity for commenting on it dang. In 2023, it is astounding to me. You would think it appropriate to comment on someone else's eating habits huh? That's funny. I don't recall inviting your opinion bold assumption that you thought your opinion warranted sharing out loud. I like food and quiet eating companions could. You remind me? Did I ask for your opinion on my meal? I don't remember asking, but you seemed to offer, so I just wanted to make sure I didn't black out and forget that just happened. Nono66 says. Yay, I'm hungry or yay, I need it to survive. Interhalibital says. Food is joy, sorry you have so little. Purplepro78 says. I would go with I know. And walk away. Uniqua Humanota says. Wow, that's a lot of food, and I'm a lot of a person who is hungry. Misanthropic 123 says. Mind your own plate. Curiosity60 says. Eyes on your own plate. Semima says. Yep and go back to what you're doing and ignore them. Lyle 1976 says. Ugh, tell me about it. I get the same crap from my family all the time. Just gotta ignore them and enjoy your food, girl. East Selection 1144 says. Sorry your metabolism sucks yep. Wind Began Home says. I recommend a saying from my home country which translates to so what? I have money so I'm eating. Curiosity60 says. Why would you say that out loud at work in a family gathering? Pelvic_kidney says. Hell yeah it is, and I'm gonna eat it. I've always had an enormous appetite and thankfully grew up without food policing. It wasn't until I became an adult and deployed that response a few times that I realized that a lot of food is a judgmental statement when leveled at women, not just an innocent statement of fact. But I refuse to be ashamed, and I've found that agreeing with someone who makes this statement typically shuts them down, especially if you say it with a big beautiful smile on your face. Nothing takes the wind out of a bully's sail quite like enthusiastically agreeing with them. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.